Hi, I'm Stephen Tallamy. Today I want to talk about a topic that comes up quite often on Pianobook, which is why do most of the instruments require the full version of Kontakt? To help set the scene, let's first discuss the differences between the free Kontakt player and the full paid version of Kontakt. The free version of Kontakt is basically a sample playback engine. On its own, it's basically useless, and you really depend on someone having made a sample instrument for you to play back in it. You can't use it to make your own sampled instruments, although you do get a 15-minute demo mode where you can give it a try. So if you want to build virtual instruments for Kontakt, then you have to buy the full paid version. But if you only want to play back samples, then you might ask, well, why do I need to buy the full version of Kontakt to play back Pianobook instruments, but also instruments from independent sample developers and even the big companies like Spitfire Audio? And when you look at the full price of Kontakt, it can seem like quite a lot of money, especially if you're not going to build your own instruments. We'll come back to that price later, but first let's have a look at how a developer gets their instrument to work in the free Kontakt player and appear in the library. Whenever you buy a player library from someone like Spitfire Audio, you're issued with a license key, which you need to put into native access for it to appear inside of Kontakt. These license keys are paid for by the developer. Native Instruments charges them an amount per library, and depending on the cost of the library and the number of units sold, a certain percentage of that library goes to pay for the license key. The higher the price of the library, or the higher the quantity sold, the lower the percentage of the license fee. You can see all this pricing information on the Native Instruments site, along with various benefits of partnering with them. But to make this real, I thought I'd run through a few examples. Now, here's the big caveat. I don't have any sales information from any of these products. I'm just making these numbers up so that we can have an illustration to walk through. So let's start with a library like Albion 1. Now, this is probably one of Spitfire's most popular products, and so I'm going to guess that they've sold around 100,000 units. Now, that's, again, total guess. It could be completely wrong, but let's just use that for this illustration. Now, the first thing to note is that this license fee is based on the MRSP, the standard retail price. This means if the library is sold at a discount, the license fee is still the same. Now, because the recommended retail price of Albion 1 is $449 and we want more than 1,500 licenses, then the license cost as a percentage is 2.5%. This means that for every copy of Albion 1, Spitfire Audio is paying a license fee of $11.23. And so, based on our made-up number of 100,000 units, this means that Spitfire Audio is paying well over $1 million to license Albion 1. Now, obviously, this is a big number, and probably this has been paid over a number of years, and I expect that Spitfire gets some sort of discount for that volume of licenses, but nonetheless, it does have an impact. If we compare this to the revenue of Spitfire libraries, then we can see an interesting picture. Now, Spitfire quite often do sales, and we take advantage of the 40% they often put on their libraries. So 40% off those libraries is still going to cost them the same amount of license fee. So again, as another completely made up figure, let's assume that 70% of people buy Albion 1 on the discounted price. This means that as a percentage of total revenue, the fees paid to Native Instruments is around 3.5%. So let's play this out with another library. Let's pick LCO Textures. So this is a newer library. It's a slightly lower cost, and I'm going to guess around 10,000 units sold. Again, completely made up, but it's good for this illustration. So if we run the same calculations, then the license fee is going to come out at around $90,000, and that equates about 4.2% of the revenue. Now let's take an example of an independent sample developer, somebody like Bunker Samples. So they have a library, Bunker Strings, that comes in at $59 at regular price. Similarly, they quite often do a 40% discount. Now, Bunker Samples don't provide a player library, so they do require the full version of Kontakt. Let's have a look at why that might be. Let's make up another number. Let's say that they sell 1,000 copies of this library. So again, we run through the revenues, look at that discounts, and you can see that this time we're getting into about 8% of that revenue going to Native Instruments. And also for an independent developer who's selling products at this sort of fee, it can be quite a lot of overhead just dealing with all those license keys and handing them out and managing them. So what about free libraries? So if a sample developer wants to release a library for free and have it work in the Kontakt player, then Native Instruments have a slightly different pricing plan. For a one-off fee of £2,500, you can get 25,000 free licenses from Native Instruments. So when Spitfire Audio released the original Lab series, they were all Kontakt libraries, but they did require you to have the full version of Kontakt, and this is why. The Labs instruments are massively popular, and I think I remember the last time they announced a figure, it was something like 5 million downloads. So let's put that into the spreadsheet and see how that comes out. So if Spitfire had chosen to switch over to being the free player libraries, they would have paid $500,000 to allow people to have access to these free Labs instruments. With that amount of money, you can see why Spitfire have developed their own library player so that they could make Labs free for everyone, yet not cost that amount of money to produce. Now, $500,000 might seem like quite a lot of money, but actually when it comes to developing software, it doesn't go that far. To make a sample library plugin actually is quite a specialised skill that requires a certain type of engineering, and that engineering isn't cheap. And when you add on to that you have to support multiple platforms, Mac, PC, and just think about what happens when a new chipset comes out from Apple, completely ARM based, and you have to rework your plugin to make it compile and work on those platforms. $500,000 really doesn't go that far. So what about some of these free sample library players like SFZ and Decent Sampler? Why are we not seeing more sample developers using these platforms? Well, the reason for that is that the development environment inside of them is actually quite rudimentary. If you want to build a sample library in SFZ or in Decent Sampler, then you're going to have to crank open a text editor and you're going to have to fill in lots of fields and lots of numbers to make it work. And if we're trying to lower the barrier for making virtual instruments, then these two sample platforms aren't really the ideal starting place. If you've ever looked underneath a Kontakt instrument, you can see there are a load of tools to help the developer to debug what's going on. So if some sample isn't playing loud enough, they can figure out what's going on, why it's not working. These tools really aren't present in these free players. And these free sample players are also not as feature rich as Kontakt is. For example, if we take the Autumn piano, we had 3 different mic positions, we had multiple dynamic layers, and we wanted to control the levels of things like the release triggers, the pedal noises, and the notes. Now, that was something I couldn't work out how to make it work in SFZ, and certainly I know that isn't supported yet in Decent Sampler. And when we released Winter Voices, we had to do extra steps to work in Decent Samplers because at the moment it doesn't support crossfades. Now, I speak to Dave quite a lot and I know that he's very ambitious and would like to add all of these features into the sample player, but they just aren't there quite yet. And if you look at some of your favourite sample libraries, they quite often have quite a sophisticated UI, lots of controls, lots of tweakability, and maybe use features like time stretching and others, but these sample players just don't really have the ability to make. So why should you pay for a full version of Kontakt? Well, for me, it's a little bit like, why should you pay for music? It's that same sort of question. When someone makes some music, you pay them some money. You either buy it or you pay some royalty to them. This is the same with software. Kontakt was released in 2002, which means that you're actually paying for around 19 years of software development experience from Native Instruments. Now, the full retail price of Kontakt alone is £359, and that is quite a lot of money. But if you own any version of a Spitfire product that is in the free player, then you can get it for £224. And if you look out for a summer sale, they quite often do 50% off it. So this summer, you could have bought it for £112. Let's put that £224 price into perspective. The first sampler I owned was hardware. It was an Akai S3000 XL, and I'm sure it cost me over £1,000. And if you're getting into modular, something like the Disting EX retails at around £299. And again, that's a Swiss Army knife. It does a lot of things and can play back samples, very much like a software instrument like Kontakt. And it's funny how we're willing to spend hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on hardware and yet not part money for some software that's not only giving you access to a wide range of independent developers, but it's also giving them the tools to release sample libraries to you. Now, I originally bought the full version of Kontakt so that I could play the Oliver Arnold's toolkit from Spitfire Audio. Now, that's now available as a player library. But I didn't buy Kontakt full edition on its own, I bought it as part of a bundle. If you buy complete 13 right now, it will cost you around £500, £499. And if you go and buy it from one of the retailers like Time and Space, then you can get it shipped to home as a full hard drive, but also you can get some money back. Now, they provide a loyalty program, so I think you get around £20 back on your purchase. And for that £500, you're not just getting the full version of Kontakt, you're getting a whole range of other instruments. They have the Noir piano, one of my favourite sample pianos, una corda, and a whole range of other useful stuff. So even if you've got a lot of Spitfire audio, or you've got other things in your template, there can be useful things that will just help you, like if you need a bass guitar or a strummed acoustic. You also get a whole range of synthesizers like Massive X, and you get a whole range of effects plugins. Now, I don't think that Native Instruments very often does a discount on this complete package, but they do discounts on upgrades, and that's how I went. So once you've bought that base package, you can then wait till a summer sale and you can upgrade at half price to the Ultimate Edition. And when you buy that, then you get a whole range of other plugins like Damage, you get various things like Thrill. There's loads and loads of really exciting instruments in that package, and the whole thing is going to come to around £750. Yes, it's quite a lot, but you are getting a lot of value in that set. And compared to the £224 price, that's quite a good deal. But you could always wait until the summer and see if they do another discount on just the full version of Kontakt. Now, Kontakt is by no means perfect, and I personally have some issues with the way in which they make it very difficult for developers to make their libraries backward compatible. However, I do think it is the industry standard and something that is worth investing in. And if you do find something on Pianobook that you would like to see if you could put into one of these free sample players like Decent Sampler, we do encourage all of the developers to provide the original WAV files so you can have a go at building the instrument yourself. Right, it's starting to get a bit dark now, so I think I'll end the video here. But I really appreciate your feedback. What do you think about paying for the full version of Kontakt? What do you think about these free sample providers? If you've enjoyed this video, then please do give it a thumbs up, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.